it's has to do with the definition of responsibility. So what is the state of responsibility? Who is responsible to whom? It's a social relationship between people. So we are not able to make a machine responsible because there's nothing we can do to the machine if it was to fail in its obligation. So responsibility is a relationship between peers, or at least somewhat peers, right? You may think that a child needs to be responsible, but they're not a peer. But you're still able to negotiate. In fact, you're only able to give responsibility to a child to the extent to which you are able to hold the child responsible. There are so many misconceptions about AI. I guess the part of the problem isn't really artificial intelligence itself. It's about intelligence, right? So if people aren't sure what they mean by intelligence, then of course they're confused by whether a machine has it or not. I think that the most useful definition of intelligence that I know, I was taught as an undergraduate for comparing between different animals. It's being able to tell the extent to which something can do the right thing at the right time. And so what is right? Well, in nature, it's being able to propagate your genes, and if it's an artifact, then it's whatever the designer determines the artifact should do, or that the owner of the operator of the artifact. So if you accept that as a definition of intelligence, then in a way it shows that intelligence is no big deal. A lot of what those people are usually worrying about is not really anything to do with intelligence itself. It's more about, like the first question you asked me, about responsibility. It's about, are we obligated to someone or something else? And that kind of thing is actually, again, much, much more social and ethical. It's nothing to do with, like, how smart something is. Artificial intelligence is basically one of the means by which we use digital technology. And digital technology is changing the entire world by making it much easier and faster and cheaper to replicate information and to transmit it all over the place. So basically, the big questions of AI ethics are the big questions of society. And so I would say the biggest questions in society right now are, how do we govern, right? So the assault on democracy, whether or not people are paying their taxes, whether they support the infrastructure that we all benefit from, the assault on the rule of law. To me, that's the biggest question. But I fully understand the people who think the pandemic or climate change are the biggest questions. I like the question that I specified, just how do we coordinate, given that now we have different information and we can coordinate differently. I think that's the biggest question, because it's the way by which we're going to answer the other questions. Really, no one should be in charge, no one individual person. Given that the problems of AI ethics are the problems of society broadly, then we don't want there to be one answer. We don't want there to be a single authority. We want there to be a coordinated response between a variety of authorities, and we want to make sure that all the people of the earth have some kind of say. So this is basically AI ethics is conflating now with digital regulation and with governance more generally. So and that is one of the side effects of the digital. It removes some of the barriers there used to be, and also the categories there used to be. So it does make things more complicated. So anyway, everyone should be involved, but in different ways. Well, I think, again, that's similar to our role in general. So what is the role of academia? Well, part of it is that a lot of it's education, right? A lot of it is holding the good ideas, that you hire people that got good marks on tests and things like that, and make sure the next generation has that information. But of course, we're also research institutions, and it's really interesting. I realize now that governments think of academia in much the same way they think of journalists in terms of people that may very well hold them to account. But academia does that from a different perspective, from the perspective of people who are willing to take a hit on, what their salary is in order to be working on, ideas and with students and focusing on the future. So it's a different set of goals. That is such a great question. I think that is more or less our choice. I think basically that the way we used to have some privacy is over. I don't think we're ever going to have anonymity again. So, I mean, not anonymity and privacy through obscurity. I think hiding is just way too difficult. We have to come up with a legal and governance structure to defend our data. And that's what the EU is currently leading the world in with the GDPR. I don't think it's AI again so much as the digital, but I mean, what it is to be human is to be an extremely social animal, right? And suddenly we're socializing with a really different group of people, and so that alters the way we think. We get different categories that way, but also it alters our political power. It alters our motivations. And again, you could say, well, movies did this, newspapers did this, and you'd be right. All these things have changed before. But this is again accelerating that. And in particular, AI also enables us to do things we couldn't do before, to know things we couldn't know, to be better photographers than we could have been, to be better drivers than we could have been. So it's enhancing. We're all kinds of superhumans now. We live longer. Yeah, it's sort of making us into super beings, but we're still beings. We're still animals. The main things that I've been learning, and I am now at the Hertie School, where we have a Center for Fundamental Rights, and I am learning more about these things myself. When you talk about positive rights, then they can be in conflict with each other, and so there's trade-offs. And when there's a period of crisis, then those trade-offs might change. So I think the biggest thing that people are worried about is what are we willing to tolerate during the period of the pandemic, and then how do we ensure that things that we only tolerate because of the pandemic are not kept, are not enforced, or the data isn't flushed. And again, I hope that I want to make it so that the safest thing you can do is delete the data that you shouldn't have anymore. But I also think that in order to make that true, we need to proactively find ways to check if people are being overregulated